Welcome to our studio room. This is our current coat rack.
Okay. As long as it hangs. There you go.
Excellent. Just hang a tiny.
I like the setup.
You like it?
It's feng shui.
We're trying. Okay. All right. Sorry. I'll start. What? Is it okay this way? Yeah. All right. Welcome to In the Act, a radio program on process in the creative life. Creativity does not just start and stop with artists. We all make aesthetic or guiding decisions. Our aim is to talk through the process and investigate how we choose to express ourselves and live creatively. We're connecting with people about their lives, and that's the subject of our show. Broadcasting from Meade Public Library in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, I am Erica Hunsinger, and this is In the Act. And today's guest on In the Act is Andre Walton.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm really glad to be here.
Yay. And Andre, quick intro, was born in Milwaukee and lived in Seattle for a while and came to Sheboygan and now calls this place home.
Yeah.
And is, oh my gosh, you have like a list of things.
Yeah.
Political activist, executive director of Our Wisconsin Revolution, which is a non-for-profit, Meade Public Library Board of Trustees, and alderperson for the city of Sheboygan 10th District. So
Quite a few things on there. But.
yeah. And you just came from talking with some students about political activism. Is that right?
No, I was mainly focusing on affordable housing. So It was a really cool conversation because a lot of these kids, which I found out, actually live in some of the affordable housing that we offer here. And I was very surprised to see that they had very engaging questions, especially around like the condition of affordable housing, what goes into it, and one of the biggest questions that I continue to have and that they have, which I was glad to see that they had, was what is considered affordable? Because there's one thing when U.S. governments or people who probably never had to live in affordable housing say what they think is affordable compared to the people who actually live in affordable housing. So it was really great to talk to those kids in middle school and really see how engaged they were and encouraged to see that they want to improve their lives at a very early age. Like I was talking to you earlier, how all I cared about at that age was basketball and Call of Duty. So it was great to go and speak with them.
That's awesome. That's so wonderful. And I love when people from the community can come in and talk to our students and connect with them about things that are real life. Important that they see and witness and experience every day. So important. So
yeah. And I think the nice thing about it is like I don't really have a political background, or I'm not a politician. Well, I guess I am now, but I think it was kind of new for them because I didn't give them like the political speak. I was telling them exactly like what it is and how I felt and my background. Because a lot of people don't know this, but the reason why I'm very passionate about affordable housing is because I grew up in rent assisted living in some areas in my childhood, and also grew up in a few shelters. So for me, it's not about just saying we need it. It's about actually giving back to the community and make sure that kids don't necessarily have to go through the experience that I have to go through, because it's not necessarily bad that people go through those experiences. It's the fact that it's usually the social embarrassment that kids have to go through when they know that they don't have what other kids may have, stable housing or a home to go to at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And a lot of the times when you live in shelters, you don't control your food, you don't control your lifestyle. So you feel different. You don't feel in place. So for me, making sure that people all have adequate affordable housing to go to and know where to find the resources is huge, because I didn't have that growing up. We just hoped for the best and hoped that things will work out in the end. And if I can prevent maybe a few people and impact in those ways, it'd be huge for me.
Absolutely. I mean, that's it's such a basic fundamental human need is shelter, and the experience of feeling safe and held in to grow up in ways that you can predict. And unpredictability and that inconsistency really does affect how you can manage doing a math homework, at school or, Yeah, I
know I did not want to focus on homework when I had to kind of go back to a shelter at night. It's like, well, what's the point of this?
Exactly. Sure.
This is my life and this was always going to be. It really does shape your perception on life. But I think, what got me through it is, talking to people who are in a position to show that things can get better.
Yes. Yeah.
And steady having that encouragement that this isn't the end game.
Yeah.
It's just you haven't even started your life, but
right. And there needs to have that full circle, like be brave enough to share your experience, because I think that's so hard to do in general, because I think there's so much shame around things that aren't necessarily right for yourself, and then to be heard or seen and acknowledged, and then find help and have that sort of like be that cycle to support and move forward, that engagement.
And I mean, for a long time, I wouldn't talk about it because it was a sense of shame, but what I realized after I got older is that when you talk about it, you learn that you're not a unique experience.
Yeah.
So many more people have been impacted by this experience as well.
Absolutely.
And when you talk about it, more other people are willing to talk about it. And that's how you start to address the issue. When more people are having conversations, and staying quiet about it is actually doing a disservice to the issue.
Yes.
So for me, it's not because I'm not necessarily proud of it, but I think it needs to be discussed because this is how we impact housing in America, is we talk about those experiences and what effects it had on the youth. And I wasn't by myself. Luckily, it was my brothers with me in these experiences and my parents. Yeah. But, everybody has a different impact on it. Parents feel shame because they can't provide. Right. Children feel shame because they're not living up to social standards of their peers. But there's nothing to be ashamed about. The only shame that we should feel is that we should feel shamed about it, in my opinion. But I don't think we should feel ashamed about it.
You mean societally, like in terms of like structure and systemic support of the people?
Yeah, exactly. Because
I agree.
Here in America, and I've done like research on how other countries have tackle affordable housing. Have you ever like researched Vienna? So in Vienna, everybody, it's kind of a mind-blowing experiment, but everybody in the country everybody in the city of Vienna is allowed to live in affordable housing except for the top 5%. So what that means is everybody invests in it and cares about the quality of their affordable housing because everybody lives in it. It's not just, poor people. It's right. I mean, you can literally be almost nearly a millionaire and live in affordable housing in Vienna. So they have beautiful, amazing affordable housing. They have swimming pools. They have amazing gardens everywhere. And the reason why I think that is because rather than seeing it as a welfare or a burden on the state, it's actually seen as a quality of life issue.
Absolutely.
It's all about perception. And here in America, we see it as like, oh, it's just, for the poor people and it's temporary and whatnot. But I think and this is going to be an increasing issue as cities expand and more people move to cities to seek employment, it's going to get even worse because obviously housing rates are going to go up. So I think,
as they have been this year, almost by 30%, I believe.
Exactly. And wages aren't keeping up with pace. So it's going to get to a point where more people are going to be seeking housing assistance, rent assistance, and they don't know where to go to because 9 times out of 10, they haven't been in that predicament. Right.
And the what is it? Land isn't allotted for, like certain land is only allotted, like in the suburbs, is only allotted for like single home ownership as opposed to multifamily or structures that can accommodate more people in less space.
Exactly. It's so many like strings and whatnot to attach when you're dealing with like housing, urban development, and the city, and it gets very complicated. But and some racism, I would think, in terms of urban planning, has really been has helped to segregate even further.
to bring that up.
What's interesting about that is when it comes to segregation, I read a study that said that we're at levels of segregation that's worse than the 1960s, which blew my mind because like we progressed a lot since then, but it's not segregation by law as like Jim Crow,
right?
But almost like self-imposed segregation. People are moving out of neighborhoods where minority communities are starting to integrate, and it's more of a segregation. So it's very interesting to see the psychology of it. And then that's why you're seeing like devalue in homing or in homes, and then businesses leave it out, and then schools being defunded, and it's a whole situation. But
it's so complex, and
it's one of those things that I'm not a psychologist or a sociologist, but like that's something I would like to look at. It's like, how does that work out, and how does that affect neighborhoods and affect the minds of people?
Absolutely,
it blows my mind.
Me too. Yeah. And I just know like top tiny iceberg tip of it when so much is underneath the water.
Exactly. It's a whole.
If that makes sense at all.
It's like Trident gum. It's just like it's layers and layers.
Plug.
Yeah, I like that gum. So
Vienna,
try it out.
That Vienna sounds amazing. That I mean, to have that sort of perspective on your community and respect and support and engagement in the daily life of your fellow human being is a really beautiful thing, and not the attitude of like pull yourself up by your bootstraps, which I think is prevalent in America, I think. When no one really does that, it's I haven't talked to anyone that has been successful that, or not successful, that hasn't had help and support from either small community areas or people in their lives somehow along the way that have given them something. Yeah,
I mean, I think that's also a very unique American thing too, is the hyper individualism.
Yeah.
In which people feel that they've gotten to the place that they've gotten only because of their own work ethic. But it takes a lot. I mean, you don't think about it, but the roads that we have are paid for in a community sense collectively. How are you going to be? Yeah, exactly. How are you going to be successful if you don't have roads to drive on? Are you going to take a horse? I mean, that's. Right. I mean,
I know.
I mean, there's so many aspects that make a person successful that we don't think about every day.
Right.
I mean, schooling is usually collectively funded.
Right. Public schooling.
Yeah, public schools. I mean, and it can come down to even smaller things. I mean, if you go to your local Boys and Girls Club, so many people had to put money into that Boys and Girls Club to make it happen. And maybe somebody from going there got impacted from going there and learned some successful traits. I mean, but we don't think about this every day. I think the sense of community has kind of been lost upon us because we have been hyper individualized in a sense. But I think the way we break that is I mean, it's been done here in Sheboygan. We have like neighborhood associations because they understand that if they want to get things done and work with the city, then it is going to take a community voice. Right. Because if one person comes to an alder or a mayor and say, "Hey, I want this fixed in my neighborhood," they're going to be like, "There's just one person. Like, go away."
Right.
It's like come back to me when there's like serious people collectively talking about this.
Absolutely. Right.
And once you get a neighborhood association saying, "Hey, we want a garbage thing, disposal, whatever around here, bring it," then that's community-based organizing. But I think that's the difference between Vienna and America is the sense of community and the sense of, in order to be successful, there has to be community engagement and the community looking out for the well-being of the future generations.
Yeah.
Not to say we don't do that at all. I just think that we lack it in some areas that we definitely could be picking up on it.
Yeah. And I think so much of it also is done through religious organizations like the church or synagogue or mosque. And then they would help each other, and that was the community. But because, we've had such a shift in multiple religions, and, we're such a diverse community. How do you feel comfortable connecting with people who may not be like you? And I think that's that's an important piece for me to try and, be a bridge within the community to help find those ways to how do we do it if we're not going to the same church and we're all not, white Protestant or something, how do we create those connections? And for me, that does fall under creativity and thinking how to create, how to enact and risk taking these small little risks.
Yeah. I think you brought up a really good point there. And I think it's those little things, right? Like religion. We start to divide ourselves and say we have nothing in common with these people because of this one thing about them. Right. But once you get to start talking with people, you learn that you have more in common than you have in uncommon. Yeah. And I learned that very fast. Just kind of having conversations on knocking doors and part of organizing as work. And you start to see that, well, what are we divided about? It's because I think we harp on the negatives so much that we forget that there's a lot of positives. Yeah. And negatives is just like, it's kind of like that bad tasting thing in your food. It stands out more, even if the overall food isn't bad, Yeah. It's going to stand out more and it's going to mess with you.
Why am I eating crunchy rice?
Exactly. And then you're not going to want to eat the rest of the meal because your mind's already made up. It's just like something else is not going to be right in here. But if you take a few extra bites, you're like, oh, it was just this one little bite. It wasn't that bad. And I think that's kind of how it is with like engaging with people and becoming friends with neighbors and people who have different backgrounds.
There was this so I used to teach preschool, and we used to really try to have the kids taste a lot of different foods and taste buds. And there's some study that you have to taste something like at least 6 times to incorporate it into your taste bud dictionary or whatever.
Nope, sorry.
What's that?
I say I can't do broccoli. I'm sorry.
Right. You're always going to have aversions, but in terms of new tastes or flavors or spices or something like that, and I feel like it's very similar to exposing to other things, the other, and having conversations like what you did this morning and talking with kids and having that dialogue and opening it up, and it changes everything.
Yeah, I feel like unless you're kind of that person, our natural human state is we don't like new things. We like our comfortability. Sure. We like feeling safe. And once you go out of that, I guess, safe space or whatever you want to call it, it feels awkward. And you're like, this doesn't feel normal. But once you get used to it, you see that it's not as bad as what your mind is telling you because you're so used to one thing. Yeah. For me, I know I get into that. I'm not perfect. But for me, I don't go to new restaurants because I'm like, I like the restaurants I go to. Right. Yeah. But once I try new restaurants, I'm like, I can't believe I haven't tried this place. Right. But yeah, I think it's just kind of human nature not to be too explorative because we do get into our habits and feeling comfortable about things.
Sure. I think Piaget talked about the word disequilibrium, and change is whether it's for the good and it's going to benefit you or if it's negative and it's going to hurt you, both cause a lot of stress because change is stressful. And I always come back to that because it always just makes me, I'm like, but it's going to be better for you. Yeah. But it's going to be stressful. And you have to live with that uncomfortability that you're talking about.
Yeah. And it's annoying because once we get used to something, it's like, why do I have to do this?
Right. Yeah.
If you change a program at work or something, everybody's like, I don't want to do this. And it's like, but it's going to make our work quicker. But I'm so used to the old system. But
right,
it helps out in the end. And I'm sure you guys have to do that with the library all the time. There's new technology that helps the work out, but there's a little bit of resistance in implementing new programs and change.
And whenever you're implementing new whatever, it takes more energy to do it. Right? It was harder for you to learn how to ride a bike. It takes a little while to figure out all the elements of navigation. But then once you're going, it's not a problem at all. There's no stress to it.
Exactly.
It's that initial bump.
Yeah. Change is weird.
Yeah.
It's really weird. But I think I read something that said, I read a lot of random stuff, but it said it takes 20 years for like society as a whole to get used to like a societal change.
Wow.
I'm not talking about like an individual change, like a societal change.
Yeah.
And to the point that they'll actually accept it. So like even if like some type of legislation actually goes past, society might not accept it for like years and years after it actually gets through.
I mean, that's almost generational time, right?
Yeah. We're very slow moving in progress. As humans, we're like, And
I wish we could remember the mistakes of our past to incorporate for the future.
Yes. I don't know. I don't know why that is, but for some reason, we just don't like to discuss the bad things that happen in our society.
Yeah.
It's like we want to put them in a box and not address them.
Yeah.
But I feel like we have to address those things in order to prevent them in the future. Because then you might repeat it in the future because history repeats itself, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's weird. I mean, I think I'm different because I actually grew up and I enjoyed history class. I was like one of those nerds. Like who enjoys history class, right? But I found out so much things from history class on like how we got to form as a nation with like Native American genocide and obviously like racism here in America. But if we don't talk about those things or address them, how are we supposed to prevent them in the future? Because everybody knows genocide is bad, but if you don't teach that, who's going to stop the next crazy person from attempting it, right?
Absolutely.
It's weird,
Yep.
but it's about that, yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird because like I didn't used to like drinking water at all when I was a kid. Like I just like flavored drinks, but now I drink it like nonstop. It's kind of ridiculous.
I have to remind myself to drink water. I'm terrible about it.
I drink it nonstop. It's kind of like a problem. But
that's good. I don't really understand the whole water thing at all. All right. Welcome back to In the Act. I'm Erica Hunsinger. We are here with Andre Walton, and we're talking about history and personal history and societal history and reflecting on like past to incorporate in the future. And I've talked about this a little bit before, but I think like individually, which ties back to what we were talking about, I think earlier too, is that sometimes we don't want to talk about the ugly things or quote unquote bad things that happened in our lives for whatever reasons. We had touched on the idea of shame, but I'm sure there's a whole host of other reasons. And there's such like a positive, like don't think about the bad things, just think about the good things. And I really feel like to be whole, we need to, we don't have to sit in the difficult or hard or challenging or ugly things, but we do need to reflect on them so that we can implement and institute change for ourselves.
Yeah, I think it's hard to think about it on a macro sense.
Yeah.
Because there's so much that entails, and then you kind of become detached from it. So you're like, oh, that's American history and American past, but I had nothing to do with that, right? So it's kind of hard to understand and can take in on a macro sense, but everybody can, in my opinion, understand it from an individualistic sense.
Absolutely.
Like, okay, if I don't know, burn some food, right? Then you're going to look back on that negative experience and see like, well, what can I do next time to make sure that I prevent that from happening?
Right.
That's looking back on your own history.
Yes.
And it's not, and I think there's not it is hard looking back at negative stuff because you rather ignore it and focus on the happiness in your life because obviously we have a society where you probably work the majority of your life and you probably do all these things that take up so much of your time. So with our spare time, we want to focus on what makes us happy.
Right.
And focusing on the negative when you have so much on your plate, it's just burdensome.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to be fulfilled and become a fulfilled person.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't address those things, what's going to stop from making that happen again? Whether it's small as burning your food, or is it as large as getting into a car accident because you were texting and driving, right?
Right.
And that happens a lot. But most people who have those like detrimental experiences are going to look back on those and course correct and say, well, I have to look back on that negative so I can make sure that I will never happen again. For example, my brother got into a car accident. Now he drives a lot safer.
Right.
But if he never took that in and seen that as a negative and reflected on that, who's to say he went reckless drive and did something even worse or got into a worse accident?
Right.
And I feel like if we can get people to understand that on an individualistic sense and take it to a macro level, then people will be less hesitant to take it on as a societal issue.
I agree.
But that's it's easier said than done.
I know. It is, but it does, I do believe it does start with like the one person and how one person can make a difference, and that, small changes can institute larger changes. It is a ripple in the water.
And kind of going back to what we were talking about when it comes to shame, I think we have to also, and this comes from many sides, because a lot of times, for example, people of oppressed, for example, Black people have been enslaved, they have been marginalized. We tend to try to shame people into addressing these issues. And I think that actually does the negative of what we want to have the outcome. But I think if we address it as a conversation and address it as we just want to see an improvement to avoid certain aspects of our society from happening again, and not shaming people into our position, then we'll be more inclined to having people empathize with us. Because when you shame people, you're losing them. Because nobody likes to feel shame, right? They don't want to feel.
There's so much anger behind it.
Yeah, exactly. Because if I go to a person and say, your family enslaved my family, and as a result, you should feel bad about everything that you've done, the result is going to be like, maybe some people will come to your side, but I think the majority of people are going to feel defensive. Like, I had nothing to do with that. I've always been friends with people like you, or X, Y, and Z.
Right.
But I think a better approach is trying to get empathy out of someone, saying, hey, this is my experience. This is what caused my family pain. And I just want to have a conversation with you. And this is why I think we should learn history about it to understand where we're coming from.
Right.
And this doesn't just go with this particular issue. This goes with, for example, political issues.
Yeah.
Because when you shame somebody, say, I need you to agree with me because my side is right, then they're going to probably feel like you're attacking them personally. But I think that's another thing I don't think it's unique to our society, but I think there's been a lot of conversation around it about like cancel culture, right?
Yeah.
If you did something in your past that was not good, then you're automatically kind of left out of the conversation, right? But everybody has done something stupid or said something stupid. I think it's kind of funny. It's kind of a funny story. You know how Facebook does the memories?
Yeah.
And I was saying some stupid stuff back in high school. And I'm like, what made me say that? And then I kind of imagine and take a step back and think like, oh my goodness, if some people found these dumb posts that I made in high school, they would cancel me. And it's just like, but I'm a very different person than I was in high school. I was like, 14, 15. Of course I'm going to say stupid stuff. But I think the difference is that now everything's online. If you said those dumb things, back in like 1990s and the 80s and early 2000s, nobody would care because like it's not being it's not permanent, know. But now everything is permanent, and if somebody brings that up, you're automatically always going to be that way, no matter who or what you've changed into to this point. So
there's an inflexibility that occurs within that.
Exactly.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
And I think the problem with that is that you're saying if you harp on that and say like, oh, you should be shamed and feel bad about that, you don't give people room to grow.
Yeah.
You're putting them into a condensed box and saying, well, this is who you are and this is who you're always going to be and you must atone for your sins, right? And then it becomes like a religious thing.
Yeah.
And then people retreat. But
who do you know that's not dynamic, right? That we are a constantly evolving body, human, that incorporates new experiences, and we may be rigid in our thinking, but then, something's going to happen along the way that's going to break that Titanic hull.
Exactly.
It just will. That rigidity doesn't allow for growth and new movement.
It doesn't, but I think it's kind of a cultural aspect that that is born out of kind of a social media culture.
Yeah.
And I think the negatives of it is that people don't see nuance anymore. And that's a big issue. Yeah. Because if you hear like a sound bite, right, and it's taken out of context, then you paint that person, and first impressions are a hell of a thing.
Yeah.
You paint that person as this one thing out of a sound bite, and you don't know their full work history.
Yeah.
That person can be a philanthropist for the issue that you're outraged about, right?
Right.
They could have put money towards this situation. And we have to stop and think about what are the unintentional consequences that can happen.
Sure.
Because of that. Because we reacted without thinking about it, does that person now retreat to a different side? Does that person stop funding that issue, or does that person go into a darker place because of that?
Right. It's been such a weird thing to watch, like the huge supportive waves that happen for maybe something that they didn't fully listen to the whole context of, or watch, or understand. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I'm sure I get caught up into it too. And
we all do.
And I think that totally. And to your point, we all make mistakes, but I think so. And it's just going to happen. I'm still always, I'm going to have jerk moments like all the rest of my life. It's just who I am. Like that's going to happen. But I think how I recover from them, or what I do to help mend or inform myself so that I don't do it in the same way again, is important. Like that, how you respond to things after you've done them is so important.
I think that's what's more important. I think we have to, as a society, give people room to grow. Because you understand that as a kid, like if you throw a tantrum or you be a little bit of a bully to a kid, you're like, he's just a kid. He'll grow out of it, right? But I think there's a sense as adults that we should be perfectly formed human beings. But that's just not true. Like we're constantly changing and evolving. Yeah. And we're going to make a lot of mistakes. Yeah. A lot of mistakes. I mean, I've made so many mistakes to this point that I continue to be like, why am I in this position? Like I'm terrible, and but then when you step back, you're like, okay, everybody makes mistakes. Nobody's perfect. But I think where we as a society are getting away from that aspect of growing and evolving as people, that if you don't grow and evolve at my time span or my time frame, then you're not a good person. But I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think some people take a little bit longer. Some people are a little bit quicker to issues. Some people are a little bit slower to issues. But I think if you're willing to be patient with people and have those conversations and understand their perspectives and where they come from, people can grow, because nature is a hell of a thing, and it's almost a sense of brainwashing, not intentionally. But if you grow up in a society or a community where something is believed is bad, then you're obviously going to get to that point where it's hard to break that mindset. For example, I know for me growing up in a majority Black neighborhood, being bisexual or homosexual was seen as unmanly. But what broke it for me is that I found out later on when I got older is that one of my brothers was homosexual, bisexual. And you start to learn, like, wow, he's my brother. Mm-hmm. He's no different than anybody else. Mm-hmm. And you learn that there is no standard of what should be known as manly. Mm-hmm. You know, you should be who you are, and that's who you are, and that's your standard.
Yeah.
But yeah, that goes. I don't know how I got over here, but I guess that goes into
I
like
love it, though.
Us growing as people, because I didn't. I guess where my initial thought was with that is that I didn't initially have the stance of people are who they are. I felt, you know, kind of what I was taught in schools or you see on TV, that you have to be super manly and lift weights and all this, you know.
Right.
But, you know, I grew as a person, and it took time to get to that position.
And love in relationships makes such a difference. I mean, it can change how you interact and flow through hardened ideals, or I don't know what you call them, but unchangeable or rules, or
I think I know what words you're talking about, but I blank sometimes too.
I don't know. I'm terrible at words. Yeah.
Yeah.
What so for you, what were some of the things that allowed you for change and growth within the...
Yeah. So for me, like I said, I did live in Seattle for 8 years. And Seattle is a very, very different place than Milwaukee.
Yeah.
And what I learned, and it's a lot more integrated than the Milwaukee. Milwaukee is a very segregated city.
I think one of the most in the country.
Yeah, I learned that right away. It was a very culture shock. But I think that kind of upbringing helped me see other people's backgrounds and understand that everything isn't like how it is in my household. Yeah. So I went to spend nights over a friend's house, and, you know, they're Hispanic, Asian, and they have very different backgrounds, very different outlooks on life. And it really kind of shaped how I think now, that everybody's different. Everybody has a different way of thinking about life and background. And for me, and obviously I just talked about my brother as well, that also helped as well. And for me, I really start to see that even though we're very different in how we approach things, sometimes we have a lot of similarities. Because my friends, we all still enjoy video games.
Yeah.
We all still were super into like race cars. We all liked, you know, pointing out cars on the street and saying like, that's going to be that car that we want when we grow up. So like going back to what we were talking about earlier, what kind of shaped me is to see that, yeah, there's different backgrounds, but we all, at the end of the day, kind of have a lot more similarities. And for me, I mean, I think that's where I kind of like city politics, since it's nonpartisan, because we can really go to people and talk about the issues and not come from it from like a partisan blinders. Because as soon as you start putting those labels on things, and people shut off their brains really quick. And for me, I just enjoy learning the perspectives of people. I kind of see it as almost like a social experiment. Like, how did they get to that point? How did they get here? I don't judge them, but
that's a really hard place to get to.
Oh, it wasn't like overnight. That's for sure. I mean, I definitely had those moments where I was just like, how can you think like this?
Right.
But
yeah.
But there's no service in being mad about it. It doesn't do anything. You're just mad. You're just going to always stay mad or always be mad. And I learned that wasn't productive. So I found it a lot more productive where just seeing people's perspective and having conversations with them, which is better than what I was doing, I can tell you that.
So this is our last segment of like 17 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely want to talk about happiness.
I know. Yeah. I was just going to say, like, good. Okay. And because you had said you wanted to talk about political engagement, your inspirations, and happiness. So I want to make sure that you You get your voice, but hold on, let me introduce and we'll go back in. Okay. Welcome back to In the Act. I'm Eric Onsinger. We're here with Andre Walton.
Thanks. Glad to be back.
Yay. And I know that we're just covering so much. I'm sitting here feeling the weight of all the stuff that we're talking about. And one of the things that you're also wanting to talk about is the importance of happiness. And that feels like a buoy within the dialogue that we're having, I guess.
Yeah.
In some ways.
Yeah, I think so, because happiness there's no definition. There's obviously a definition in the Webster or whatever, but there's no definition of what your happiness is or how you can find it. And what I learned is that we have a lot of societal things that are put upon us that we should do to obtain happiness, right?
Yeah. We
should go to school, be smart, get an education, work a job, and be successful monetarily. Mm-hmm. But money, in my opinion, is only a short-term happiness. Mm-hmm. It only gives you a boost of happiness because you're no longer worried about being homeless or
basic
whatever.
needs.
Basic needs, right? And I think there's a lot of studies out there that money doesn't buy happiness. Mm-hmm. I mean, you see like NFL players and rich people who are severely depressed.
Yeah.
But I think the reason why that is because we have a hard time finding happiness because we have societal burdens on us. And I can completely understand that. We have to make sure we work a job. We have to take care of our families. So it's hard to pursue happiness. One of the things that are in our Constitution, that the pursuit of happiness, but there is rarely any time or space to pursue that goal of happiness. We have time to pursue monetary gains, but how do we pursue happiness? And in my opinion, I think we just have to do what makes us happy. And I know that's very like unnuanced, but for example, I think, we have to, for example, I enjoy playing games.
Yeah.
For some people, that may be considered a huge waste of time. Like, what are you benefiting from it? I'm benefiting my happiness. I enjoy doing it.
Right.
It may be a waste of time to you because you don't enjoy it, but I enjoy it. It makes me happy. So it's not a waste of time.
Right.
It's only a waste of time if I feel like I should be doing something else with my life.
Sure.
But I think that's where, I think I was talking about this to the students I was speaking with earlier a little bit about the exploration of students. In some countries, they don't give students homework because they want kids to explore life, enjoy themselves, and figure out what makes them happy so that they can figure out what they want to do with their life.
Yeah.
So they don't give homework. Instead, they have like assignments like, okay, go enjoy this movie. What did you take away from it and things like that. But for me, I had a hard time enjoying or finding happiness growing up because I never got to explore that much.
Yeah.
I never got to figure out if I like being into music.
Right, those options.
Yeah, mm-hmm. I never got to understand if I enjoyed, I don't know, like woodworking or whatever the case may be, because since we kind of lived in that structured bubble, like, okay, we're going to school. After school, we're playing basketball. It was kind of put upon me that I play basketball early on. But then I ended up enjoying it. But that was kind of but not everybody does that. But I continue to ask myself, what if I had more time to explore kind of what can make me happy?
Right.
But
and tied within that is like inspiration and creativity, right?
Exactly. And now as I gotten older, I put less burdens on myself to say that I need to do X, Y, and Z. I need to have a house bought. I need to have this amount of money to feel successful. Instead, I focus it on, okay, how do I find what makes me happy and pursue it from there? So for me, I accidentally fell into organizing. I never, and that's what what makes me happy. I end up getting into organizing because I seen that improving the others' lives makes me happy. It's not money. Money has never, everybody has a different, kind of like what drives them, but money doesn't drive me. But seeing somebody's improved life or something that I help benefit someone else makes me sleep easier at night. And it makes me happy.
That's beautiful.
So I think going back to happiness, I think what we have to do is try to come from a place where we're not burdening young people with societal issues. Like, you need to have this done. You have to have all your ducks in a row before you're 18 or after you're 18 so you can know what you want to major in and know what you want to. I went 4 years in college, and I went 2 years like with no major, and then the last 2 years I finally figured out, and guess what? I figured out I hated that.
Right.
And then I got a degree in it, and I don't even do anything with it. So it's just like, if I had more time to explore, maybe I would have found out what I wanted to do and not wasted all that money on something I don't even do at all.
And I think that's such a common thing for people, that it's so relatable. And from talking with people on this show, there's so many people who are like, well, I kind of fell into this other thing because I enjoyed it. And then I liked the people that did the same thing. And so I just kind of went with that. It's following those inspired, successful, happy moments or something, or really trying to tune into yourself is so important. I think is to note what feels good to me. And even if it doesn't feel good to you, like playing a game, it feels good to me.
Yeah. And I think one way we can possibly address that when it comes to happiness is obviously not putting too much burden on our children growing up, but also just having like, obviously field trips are a thing, but maybe having like mentorship programs where you get to meet all these different people in different professions and see if that's something that you enjoy.
Totally.
Because I think I finally went to a play for like the first time in college. And I was blown away at how much I enjoyed that play. Yeah. And I'm like thinking in the back of my head, what if I had gone to these when I was younger? What if I would have wanted to go into stage acting? Because I enjoyed it so much, but it was amazing. But I was like, I'm 21. I'm not doing that. So it's too late for me. But
exposure and options and those.
And seeing different aspects of life really can get you to a point where you're getting into something. Because I think what we do as a lot as people, we work to live instead of live to work. Or no, I'm sorry. I think I said that backwards.
Did you? I know what you mean.
Live to work instead of working to live. So that's what I mean.
Yeah.
And I think that should be the reverse. We should work to live. Because most of us, we get our little weekends off, but what are we getting to explore? We're mostly kind of relaxing.
Or like taking care of all the things that you couldn't get to in the work week, right? Like laundry and grocery shopping and all the little details to help you function for the week. Exactly. Like, where's the time for self and there's been such a shift in focus on how to particularly during the pandemic, like our pleasure and connection has changed so much. And then how do we reinstitute new ways of being and finding what does feel good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that goes back to kind of how our society is structured, that we're kind of like work ethic centric society. And don't get me wrong, there's certain aspects of that is valuable, but one of the things that I also figured out, like I watch documentaries and read articles, is that even though we work a lot as Americans, we do not have a higher productivity than countries that work less.
6-hour days.
Exactly. Sometimes 4-day weeks. And you're like, how is that possible? Here's a thought. A person or a worker who is more happy is going to be more productive.
Yep.
So they're going to get way more done than a person who is like depressed about their job and they hate their lives.
Right.
Than somebody who works 4 days a week. They enjoy time with their family,
right,
and they're enjoying life. It's simple to understand, but I think here we come to the aspect of like we have to work to get things done, and which you do, but you don't have to overly work. You don't have to burn yourself out to get things done.
How do you manage it? What do you do that? How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm in an extremely privileged position to be an executive director of a nonprofit. But I have an extremely well-balanced work-balanced life. I make my own schedule, but because I make my own schedule and I have time to get done the other things that I care about, I feel like I'm more productive at work. I get things done quicker.
Right.
So there's no like hourly thing that I have to meet. I'm meeting
like a
goals.
punch clock.
Yeah, exactly. I'm meeting
right.
goals. So I'm in a very well-privileged position. And I meditate. So that helps. So
nice, really?
Yeah. So,
how do you meditate? Do you have a special spot? Can I ask about it?
Yeah. So like for me, I set my schedule every week. And so I leave 2 hours for the most part at the end of the night for two things. 1 hour for watching anime because it's amazing.
Cool.
And it's fun to watch. So yeah, that's fun. It makes me happy. It balances me out because after a long work day, I can chill and watch something stupid that I don't have to think about.
Right.
And then the last hour, I can meditate and reflect on the day that I've had and let go of all the stress that I've been through for that day. And then I sleep good at night.
Wow.
And that helps me balance out so much.
So when you meditate, do you sit down on the floor? Are you in a chair?
I guess it depends.
How do you set yourself up for that?
It depends on my mood. So if my back's hurting, I'm laying down.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, like if I'm in a good mood, yeah, I'll sit up. Sometimes I'll sit on the floor because I feel a little bit more. Because having that back structure sometimes is not good for my posture, so I'll sit on the floor. But yeah, I'll pick different rooms just so I can change up the feel. And yeah, I just, put on some calm music and relax my mind and try to release all the stuff that I've been through in that day. Because what I found out is that when I try to go to sleep and I don't do that, all this stuff about what I could have done differently starts to come back in my mind. Like, oh, I should have done that. I should have planned this. I should have. But if I do that an hour before and meditate and get it out the way, I'm sleeping like a baby. I'm not worried about that anymore. When
you're meditating and you're going through the process, do you have the shoulds, or do you just try and calm your mind, allowing the thoughts to come in, acknowledging them and pushing them?
Yeah, so meditation is about not punishing yourself. Your mind is going to drift. But what you have to do is take a breather and take yourself back to that state of calmness, because your mind is going to drift. It's going to start thinking about things that you probably shouldn't be thinking about. But recognize that and say, all right, bring yourself back, release it, and acknowledge that you had a slip and get back to your peaceful point. Because unless you're like a master at meditation, there's nobody who is just perfect at meditating.
Right.
Or a guru or something, but I'm not that. But yeah, for me, it's just about finding that peaceful point, acknowledging that I had a slip in my thought process, and then bringing myself back to center.
Wow.
And it takes a lot of breathing methods and all this good stuff. But
yeah,
meditation has like almost like rebalanced my whole life. I had a serious issue when I first got involved in politics with work-life balance. I spent way too much time continually thinking about politics. And as a result, I got burnt out. And I literally did not want to be a part of politics for like the next 6 months.
Sure.
But now that I found that kind of that balance and also just in life, don't punish yourself. It's okay if you want to take a day off and not clean something because you've had a hard day or you want to spend an hour on the game because your day was stressful. But don't punish yourself. Don't say you have to do X, Y, and Z by this time because it's there. I think we're a little bit hard on ourselves as humans.
Yeah.
And think that we have to have everything right and perfect. But I think if we continue to tell ourselves that we're not perfect human beings, and just the only thing that, in my opinion, we can do is be better tomorrow. And if you don't punish yourself for that, I think that's how we become better people. But yeah, I don't
That's
punish
beautiful.
myself. Yeah.
I love that. I
It's
want to
not
hold on to that little nugget of truth, like self-truth. And I think
And people always ask me if I'm like super spiritual or something. No, I'm not really super spiritual. I'm just trying to improve as a human being. And that's really how I think about it. I mean, my girlfriend is super spiritual, so she likes doing all the readings and stuff like that. But that's not me. I just like, relaxing and chilling out my mind.
Right. Well, that's a lovely sort of ending to come to for our talk together.
Yeah. This is great. Yeah, I like this.
Yeah.
I know I can talk a lot, but
That's great. We can do it again.
Oh yeah.
If people want to get a hold of you though, or know more about what you're doing, how can they find you?
Yeah. So I'm very active on Facebook. So I'm very open to having new people on Facebook. So I'm just Andre Walton on Facebook. I also have a Twitter now. So
nice.
I don't have like a super public Twitter, but I have my campaign Twitter, which is Walton Force Your Boy 10 on Twitter. And if people want to reach out to me through email, you can either find my city email on city website, or you can just email my personal email, andrewalton56@gmail.com. Pretty responsive on there.
Excellent.
But yeah, I'm always open to conversations and people can reach out to me.
That's so wonderful. And thank you so much for sharing so much and connecting about your life and politics and individual and the bounce through. So thanks so much.
Thanks for letting me just talking. Yeah.
It's fabulous.
It's amazing. I like talking. So
yay. Well, it's great. Thanks so much, Andre.
Yeah. Thank you.
In the Act is produced in the studios at Mead Public Library in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. More information on the web at meadpl.org.